BioVersys is a company that I started many years back directly from my PhD thesis at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, and we are fully focused on antibiotic resistance and infectious diseases. And the company has grown up since. We have quite a rich pipeline focused on these high unmet medical needs in the infectious disease and AMR space. We have recently been able to take the company public on the Swiss Stock Exchange, and we do have 2 clinical assets. One is entering phase 3 for resistant Acinetobacter infections in the lung. And then we have also a project against tuberculosis, which is in phase 2 clinical development, partnered with GSK. And in our preclinical pipeline, we have also 2 assets, one focused on Staphylococcus aureus, and then obviously very important, our NTM asset that moves forward. The NTM infections are notoriously difficult to treat, and this stems on the one hand really from the chronic nature of these infections, but also the multiple subspecies of the mycobacteria that are part of the NTM family. And normally these infections also require either combination therapies or alternating antibiotics to be treated over time. And when we look at this in the company, for us it was important to have patient compliance, of course. So ideally, we would focus on an oral therapy here. Then we look at all of the subspecies. So we want a very broad coverage of all the subspecies in the NTM family, including Mycobacteria abscessus. Then, of course, with the resistance profiles, that we have a good resistance profile, that we have the possibility to combine with potentially other agents in the therapy. And that also goes along with all the other treatments that CF patients or NTM patients often get. So you need to have a rather good profile in terms of the drug-drug interactions. Yes, so our project very specifically for NTMs is actually based on one of our more advanced pipeline projects, which uses, the enzymycin chemistry, which has a few family members from that, from the enzymycin chemistry that are well-known drugs like rifampicin or rifabutine. And when we started working on this family, we did realize that it was probably underexplored in terms of chemistry and additional work to be done around the core of that chemical structure, and thus also the final drug target, which is the RNA polymerase. And what we further optimized then within the family is to overcome pre-existing resistances that particularly exist in the NTM species, but also optimize a bit more the PK/PD profile, including potential for drug-drug interactions. So, reduce the CYP induction that is intrinsic to the family, for instance. So we went really specific from a rather well-known starting point to overcome some of the issues, and we had the chemical means to do so. And that means that we believe we have at hand an asset that not only shows very good efficacy, but that we also know a lot about the safety profile already around it. And that's hopefully really delivering then a new molecule or a new drug for patients that is not only efficacious, but also has a good safety profile, thus comes along with patient convenience to actually take the drug going forward in treating the disease. Yeah, I think we were one of the first projects selected actually by the syndicate, and we had a wonderful experience within the syndicate, really. That's not only speaking about the obvious funding portion, but really also from the scientific expertise. Our team enjoyed the interactions a lot. We got a lot of inputs on the scientific level, but also really with assets like additional clinical isolates from NTMs, etc. So access to resources that are not so easy to get to as a smaller company. So we were really very, very happy with this collaboration. With chronic and multifactorial diseases, also as a drug developer, you should understand what are the day-to-day problems of the patient and how is their daily life affected by the disease, but also by all the therapies that they have to take. Because somehow your molecule, ideally, if you have the chance, is not only efficacious against the actual bacteria that we want to treat here, but also offers a possibility to have an improved quality of life, meaning a convenience for the uptake of the drug, so the daily use of the drug, and the side effect profile that meets the requirements. And in that sense, it's great that the syndicate here offers the possibility to not only listen to patient voices, but eventually even, be potentially direct in touch with them and really learn from patients, from physicians, and then on the scientific side, the drug development piece. Yeah, I think most traditional drug development approaches obviously focus very strongly on the science, right? And particularly in the early stage of drug development, where it's about the new target or the target that you address, the physical chemical properties and so forth, you very easily risk to be totally lost, let's say, in the science and optimize only that. But you keep potentially forgetting a little bit the all-day life of your different users. And one of the users is, of course, the physician, because they need to prescribe it and understand it from that perspective. But the end user is obviously the patient. So what are they going through? What are their routines and their problems with taking current standard of care, for instance, for the disease, and what needs to be optimized? And I think that's fairly unique because as, in early stage projects, I think, I don't want to say too much, but I think most scientists kind of forget that picture because they're not very familiar with it. They don't see it in their all day unless they have potentially a personal relationship to someone that has such a disease. But that can get forgotten in all the difficulties that you have just simply developing a molecule that is efficacious, right? But in the end, it makes a lot of difference for the patient to see that they not only have an effective drug, but ideally also one that suits best into all-day reality. I think there's plenty to be optimistic about. I think we understand the disease better and better. I think that also in general, the AMR field, so antimicrobial resistance and how we treat bacteria in general, makes progress in the sense of understanding better how certain combinations of drugs and so forth going forward can optimize the treatment and minimize the probability for resistance development. And I say that in particular for such chronic diseases like NTMs. Our company also develops a tuberculosis medicine, and in that field we know very well about all of the combinations, etc. And to contain resistance, if you think about it, in tuberculosis, in settings where it's really difficult to contain resistance because drug adherence, long-term treatment, all of that. And we believe that combinations of molecules in the right way put together is a tremendous benefit. And I think that overall the field is getting more and more to these conclusions, and that renders me very hopeful that we have long-term solutions ahead of us that actually are being able to treat the infection, but also cause less resistance going forward, and ideally, obviously, combine a very good safety and tolerability profile so that the patients actually feel positive about taking the medicine. And so I'm very optimistic in that sense that the field overall makes a lot of progress. And that's, as I just mentioned, beyond a standalone mode of action of one molecule, which obviously is also important, and we do progress there. But I think it's really about the therapeutic approach, how we look at that. At BioVersys, we are really dedicated to provide solutions for patients suffering from NTM disease, cystic fibrosis patients, COPD patients that suffer from this disease. It's a difficult to treat disease overall, and it's a long-term treatment. So we are fully committed to actually really develop molecules that are hopefully very well tolerable and at the same time highly efficacious to treat these bacteria and give back really quality of life to these patients. We are really excited to partner our NTM asset with Shionogi and looking forward to the collaboration with them. It really means for us mainly that we further de-risk the development of this program and expedite also the development towards clinical trials for our NTM asset. And at the same time, as a company, we maintain financial discipline, which is also important, bringing these assets forward. And yeah, overall, it's a very good trajectory because since we joined the CF AMR Syndicate, the program was at really early stages. We advanced that very nicely through the early development phase and could attract a large pharmaceutical partner like Shionogi already, and now really ensuring that this program has the best chances to reach clinical development and thus also patients. From our perspective, Shionogi is a really great and credible partner for NTM project. Shionogi is one of the 5 large pharmaceutical companies that are still very dedicated to the infectious disease and AMR space. So colleagues over there are very credible in the field. And NTM also poses a high burden, for instance, in their home market in Japan. And overall, we feel that we onboarded really a very strong and credible partner for us. And thus we are excited to collaborate with them now. Things like this, what you're doing with connecting with the community and the patients, I think that's so great. Obviously in CF, this is much more established. I wish we would have more of that also in the acute infection space, which we don't. But I think this is super important. And so I'm really glad to be part of this. I think, in the end, we develop these molecules, even though in the lab it feels so early and more than 10 years away from anything real, to be honest. But in the end, you develop it for the patients. So you should never forget about that, actually.